Hey guys, welcome back. It's Friday. It's one of my most anticipated Fridays forever, and you're watching this on Monday, which is not good for you. I'm assuming or estimating that the coronavirus patients in New Orleans will be around 500 by Monday morning. Hopefully, you're watching this at 8 o'clock. And that unfortunately, the deaths are going to be in the neighborhood of 16 by Monday morning, March 23rd. Could be wrong, but I'm going on record there just in case. Okay, we're taking a look here. Some people call this a cladogram or a phylogenetic tree. It's irrelevant. See how it works. All right. I want y'all to focus over here on the right. These are all land plants, but there's some differences between them. These are non-vascular. So going back to this, we talked about the origins of aquatic life moving forward onto land and vascularity, which exists over here with the lignified tissue, vascular tissue here with less lignin and no vascular tissue at all. That's a great separator between the liverworts, hornworts, and mosses. And then we get on the vascular plants, and those are further separated into whether they have seeds or not. If you remember, it was the seed that made these guys super adaptable to life on land because they didn't require as much water and essentially very little water for fertilization to occur, and in some cases none, depending on how dry adapted they are. And then the seeds can be carried, so it's very much better for dispersal. But as you understand with common ancestry, can I make this smaller? Yeah, that's not good. Control Z. Do this. See our years here. So it's very much important to remember that the common ancestry is how these guys get here. These dotted lines tell us we are not exactly sure. And the reason for that is, as you know, plants don't leave the best fossils. So the fossil record is a little bit tough to use here because we don't truly understand these events. We know they occurred, and we know divergence occurs based upon animals in the fossil record, but here we can't really see it because, bad fossils. Anyhow, plants are getting on land in this neighborhood of 475. I know I told you 500. We have to make some sort of interpolation of the data again. It's just like when we talk about prokaryotes being the first form of life, but the first evidence is at 3.5 billion years ago. And we know that since that was photosynthetic, that 3.9 billion years ago, it seems more likely for life to evolve for anywhere from 400, maybe 300 million more years before it comes up with photosynthesis. So if you saw, this is clickable. I've taken some of you through these lessons before, and you can click through these to take you where we want to go. That's going to take us to slide 7. If we want to go back to our cladogram, we can do it that way. All right. So bryophytes, they're seedless and non-vascular. It's making them semi-primitive. They're still here today. They're doing fine. It's just that they have to be very much near moisture. And like I told you earlier, these mosses, I found some yesterday. If I could take the computer outside and walk up to it with this camera, I'd actually do that with you and do a live search. But I'm looking out of this north-facing window. And that's important in the southern hemisphere. These guys will grow in cooler, wetter locations than on the southern side of our houses where the sun beats us up, especially starting around this time of year. We're getting into the equinox, right? When we're halfway through the shortest day of the longest day of the year, which is in the neighborhood of March 21st. Somebody fact check me. I could be wrong on that, but we're about halfway to June 21st, which is the longest day of the year, again, depending on where you are on the planet. So the apical meristem, apex meristem, region of growth, right? And they have true roots. Lacking the true roots and leaves, but they do have many adaptations for moving forward onto land, right? They grow low to the ground because they lack that lignin that makes them stiff, and they obviously have to be really close to water, all right? And then Wikipedia sometimes works. Let's see. Should work on my computer. They took it away from us. since it's such a good scientific source, we're just going to go here. Use Wikipedia to start you off on another search. But this is the Spanish moss that we're used to talking about. And it's not a bryophyte. It is an angiosperm, which if we come over here, that's way down here. So it actually makes flowers. They are inconspicuous. They're little red doodads. Come back to that. Where did it open up? Did it open up here? Yeah. Let's see if we can get a nice little, see classification-wise, angiosperms, and then, yep, there's the flower right there. Seed head, flower head. That makes them angiosperms, which are far more advanced. We call them moss. I don't even know where that comes from, but that's what we do, right? So bryophytes, more primitive. Moving up the chain a little bit, vascularity. You can see these are more robust, a little stiffer, a little taller. And in fact, during the Carboniferous period, these guys grew pretty darn large as a result of just the environmental conditions really supporting them when CO2 levels were actually much greater than they are today. And it was one of the greatest times in history. It includes lycophytes and pterophytes. They got better root systems. Temperate forests. We are not temperate. We're damn near tropical. We consider to be subtropical. We're also surrounded by water, which affects our climate, but that's locally, not necessarily regionally. Regionally, Gulf Coast is related, but we're sandwiched between the Gulf and Lake Pontchartrain here in New Orleans, so that kind of messes us up a little bit. Temperate is a location that has around 4 seasons. So you got to get up into North Louisiana, Tennessee, even northern Tennessee to experience the 4 seasons, because hard winters don't really set in even into Tennessee. Yeah, so these guys, though, they still require that moisture for fertilization. And we're going to talk about the way they reproduce probably next class. We'll see how long we go here. So this ought to be shocking to you. Out of all the plant species, 90% of them are seed plants. That tells you right away that this is the most successful strategy. It's newly developed. Seed plants are, in this region, approximately, according to this, around 360 million years old. So that's new, according to what's going on with their evolutionary. Got a little sidetracked there for a minute. I know you can't hear it, but I forgot exactly what I was saying. So these guys are, super successful. That's the word I'm looking for, in the Carboniferous period as a result of having that greater amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, okay? But they're still looking for water for fertilization. Yes, I was here. Remember, those seeded plants, as I was saying, this is the gold standard for life on land as a plant. There wouldn't be 290,000 species or 90% of all species if that wasn't the case. So a very robustly packaged food supply inside of a protective coating can be transported, can land in a dry environment and wait for years for moisture. Seeds can be held for years. And then pollen. Holy hell with the pollen right now on March 20th in New Orleans. It is insane. Cutting the grass is dangerous. Sinus infections. So the big difference in angiosperms and gymnosperms is the presence of the flower. So that is the new condition, is the presence of the flower. While we're talking numbers, let's just move forward. There's 250,000 species of all plants are angiosperms. 250,000 out of 290,000. So flowering seed plants are the most predominant, and they're also the newest development. 140 million years ago at least. So they're new and young and thriving. This was the way to go, largely because of the pollinators that could be attracted. Here's an example. This bee is bouncing from flower to flower. So the mode of fertilization is a lot more reliable and has a great deal more diversity. Okay, so gymnosperms are broken down into conifers and other groups, and conifers are the most prevalent. And you can tell, I don't know, when I look at this, I feel like I'm walking through an old dinosaur infested area because of these plants, especially this sago palm here, these cycads. They make me feel ancient. Right? That's what I see when I see dinosaurs, because, you know, dinosaurs. Yeah. Most recent, angiosperms, complex structures. They have fruit. They're super awesome at thriving. And I think I'm going to squash it here, last slide, because we're going to get into life cycles next, and that's going to take your brain to a different place. So I'm going to take more time with that, okay? So this is the 4 things that occurred. These are not the same list that you were putting in your study guide from here. These are required adaptations for plants to move on land. And though this is ambiguous, this is another list for key adaptations. Let's just do that again. Requirement to move on to land. They had to find solutions to these problems. These are generally parts of the solutions. Okay? So it's a different discussion, though related. So here's the adaptations that occurred. Dependent embryos. These plants depended upon the embryo remaining on the plant until it reached maturity and then could be dispersed in a very easy format with a package that waited for better conditions. The lignification of their vascular tissues, they became stiff, rigid, upright. They could compete by being taller. They could fight against the wind. They could grow in new environments. Seeds, obviously, out of 290,000 species, 261,000 produce seeds. And out of that 261, 250 produce flowers. Seeds are critical for dispersal. Flowers are critical for attracting pollinators. It's obviously the way to go because 250 out of 290,000 plants. That's a big percentage. Take it easy.